Welcome to episode 2 of The Drop. Now, before I get started, I want to say a massive thank you and big love to everybody for watching episode 1 and all your lovely comments and feedback. If you haven't watched episode 1, shame on you. No, I'm joking. Go and watch it now. It is the quintessential British summertime. There's been a bit of rain. And we're at the historic Carp Society Horseshoe Lake, where I'm meeting up with a member of the Nash team you may not have seen on camera for a while. He's an exceptional angler. He has a pretty responsible, high-profile job within Nash, which is leading up the Nash bait machine. It's none other than #ThatSo Max Hendry. In the session, we're going to focus on fishing over particle. We're going to look at how Max approaches it, the mix he uses, and more specifically, the hook baits he chooses to fish over the top. I think he was even here last night and he may have caught one. So hopefully, fingers crossed, over the course of the session, we can show you a couple more horseshoe bangers. Man like Max Hendry, how are you, mate?
Good, thank you, mate.
Well?
Good to see you.
You look very comfy. Look like you've had an exciting night, mate.
Yeah, mate. It's been a bit of a dirty one.
But in a good way, mate. A very good fishy way, mate. Why are we here? What are we doing? How have you got on? Talk to me.
Horseshoe, home of the lovely Cotswold scaly carp. So, thought it was a good venue, and we're particle fishing, and this place, they do like particles, don't they?
And to be fair, mate, we've got some wind hacking in. The weather, like preceding this, the last couple of weeks have been hot, and we've got a bit of a pressure drop, haven't we?
Yeah, mega weather. Proper carpy for the last, well, like you say, well up last few weeks, and now we're looking like we're right on for a bite or two, and that's exactly what's happened, mate. So.
What did you have? The original, didn't you?
Yes, so original first thing this morning, about 1 o'clock I had a small common as well, but yeah, the original was lovely, like exactly what I wanted to come and catch, to be honest. So yeah, made up, but hopefully, yeah, there's more to come. It's looking really good.
We're in a good swim, and I'm going to do the classic thing, and I will get some stick for this, mate, because I did this in the last episode. I'm going to jump in next to you, but you have said that I can do that, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be my pleasure. I think straight out there, 60 yards plus, and they're out there, and there's been a few showing, and I thought, that spot's working, we might as well get another one going, joining on the action.
I like the way you roll. I love it.
We'll have a lovely time, won't we?
Very social, but a good swim. Fingers crossed, we'll get something going. While you're plumbed up and sorted and happy days, I'm going to go and try and find a spot, get some rods in action, get some particle out there, and hopefully catch a couple more, mate.
Yeah, evening time and early morning.
Early morning.
It's on.
Going. Horseshoe is covered in siltweed, so we're going to introduce some bait and fish particle. The first most important thing is to try and find an area, preferably a clean area, which is not snarled up in siltweed, where we can present all that lovely particle. The fish can come over it and hopefully get a bite. Now you can see what I'm doing is strategically picking a far bank marker, in this case the tallest tree, and I'm casting in line with that, trying to find a firm drop, which indicates, in this case, on here, gravel and not siltweed. Now, on that cast, I got a drop, but I did feel the lead going through the siltweed as it touched down. And as you'll see when I bring this back, the lead will be absolutely covered in siltweed. Now, you can catch over that. There's no doubt the fish feeding that. There's loads of naturals, but when you're presenting particles, generally when I'm fishing, the cleanest spot, in this case those gravel spots, those hard areas, are often, I don't know if they give me more confidence in fishing over them, especially when I'm going to put some bait out. So it's a case of repeating the process, but I'm going to keep working it, try and find a clear patch of gravel, and then when I've done that I'm going to clip up, apply some bait, and then get the rods out over the top. Steve, thank you so much for joining me, mate. How are you? You well?
All right, it's good to see you again.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it, mate?
Yeah, it's been a little while, hasn't it? But it's always good to come down and see you and have a chat.
Nice one, mate. We're going to chat about the specifics and how you go about and approach fishing in weed. It's summertime, weeds up on a lot of venues. It is a potential sort of barrier to some people. Some people really don't know how to approach it. You I've caught a fair few big uns and a fair few fish in your life, fishing in and around weed. So talk to me about weed, fishing in and around it, how you go about it, mate.
I actually love fishing in weed. You know, it was noticeable on the Island Lake, Kingsmead Island Lake last year. They all said once the weed comes up, everyone would disappear. And they were right. You know, people are sort of frightened of fishing around weed or in weed. And for me, it makes life a lot easier in certain ways. You know, I mean, there's different types of weed, isn't there? So there's different ways of approaching it. And on there, which is quite typical for a big lake, the first one was the eel grass. That springs up in the spring, literally. And what I find with that, it comes up to the surface and it's really thick, but there's always channels and, you know, areas where it almost closes the lake down, because you've got these areas where it's chock-a-block with weed. And all right, you might get fish sitting in the weed, hiding in it, but their patrol routes and everything they're a lot clearer. So it makes the fishing for me a lot simpler. You know, you can see where you got a fish.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've got those clear areas, you've got the channels, and that's the very simple side of weed fishing, you know. But I know a lot of people say, well, that's not fishing in weed, you know, that's fishing on clear spots.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you've got fishing in weed. You know, there's certain lakes I've fished in the past where they're like covered in silkweed. There's that silkweed. It can be like fresh green or sometimes that horrible smelly brown stuff. And that's more difficult. You know, you can't sort of pull back in that stuff. You know, as soon as you cast out, you might feel a donk or whatever and you think that's all right. As soon as you pull back, everything's covered in weed.
Yeah, I've definitely had that before. Yeah, classic.
Yeah. And that's the time either... I mean, it's easy enough. The fish are looking for food. That's where they feed in all the time. So if you're putting out freebies, boilies and all that, they're going down in that weed and the fish are digging them out. So don't be frightened about your hook bait going down in that. You know, I've never been worried about having a really visible hook bait. You can fish a pop-up over the top of it. One very nice way of fishing it is just a little bag, a little solid bag or a mesh bag, and that just sort of gives you a nice little presentation. But I wouldn't worry about it too much, do you know what I mean? Like, if it plonks down in the weed, and even if you can't see it, they can't know it's there. When they're looking for food, they're going to dig it out.
In that situation, if you're actually fishing in that type of weed, obviously you need your hook to be able to go in the fish's mouth to get yourself that bite. Is there anything you do specifically with regards to actually being in it? Because I'd conventionally think a pop-up over the top, brilliant, visible, they see it, your hook's free, you can hook them. But if you're actually, without the solid bag, if you're putting a rig into that weed, is there anything specific that you can do that you've used that sort of ensures that the hook can still take hold?
You know, the only thing you must not do is pull back, because then you've got the weed on your hook and then it is masked. As long as you just feel it down, donk, that hook bait's going to settle in there, and when the fish sucks out, it's going to come out fine. You know, you think about it, where you're pulling, it's going to pull the rig into the weed. Isn't it? But when the fish are sucking the bait, the hook's going the other way. It's a confidence thing with weed, you know, it just is. And all the time you're catching fish and all that, you think, oh, it's not as hard as what you think. You know, most of the problems with all aspects of carp fishing are in our own heads. And once you start catching fish in weed, you think, well, it's like silt, you know, casting into silt. People think they've got to have a pop-up, you know, the bait's got to be visible. So, you know, people think they've got to be able to see it from 10 miles away and all that. You know, carp are used to feeding in that stuff. It's what they feed in. So, yeah, no problem with that.
Lead-wise, anything like that, when you're fishing, even if you're fishing a clear spot, let's say, and it's surrounded by weed, like you referenced at the start, and maybe when you're fishing in weed, do you change your lead arrangement? Is it important to drop that lead? What are your thoughts around that?
Again, it's the type of weed and the thickness of the weed. You know, if I'm fishing to a clear spot over like 30, 40, 50 yards of solid Canadian, I'd probably want to drop the lead, you know, because that lead's going to get clogged in the weed. It just does. If it's not too thick, then I'd normally go with a helicopter setup with a smallish lead. And just, you know, I don't like losing leads unless I have to. So, if it's not too thick, just helicopter style and get everything back.
Brilliant. And baiting. So we talked there about you don't like the sort of bright, blatant, you want to fish in amongst it. That's more natural for the carp. For you, bait in around weed, would you do anything more specific? Like if you're fishing in the weed, would you use like more flakes so it sits around it, or you'd be happy to use whole boilies? What would be your sort of your confidence based on in terms of bait around weed?
Yeah, again, I like the idea of using flake. I do use that around weed because as it settles, it's just what you've alluded to, you know, it does catch on the bits of weed, the fronds and everything on the way down. And it gives you those layers, you know, instead of everything being flat on the bottom, if a fish is sort of cruising through 3 foot off the bottom, you know, there's all bits around them as they come into an area. There's food in all the different layers. So I do like the flake. And even, you know, look, the silkweed is the same. It'll settle on top. You know, I'm a great believer in fish use their nose more than their eyes. So they'll find food if it's there anyway. But if you can spread that around, you know, visible food never hurts anyway. And plus the scent is going to be all around rather than just flat on the bottom. So yeah, the flake and all that side of it. Yeah, I like to do that. I mean, my main approach would normally be just boilies, but yeah, it depends on the situation. If you can add attraction into an area, it's got to do you good, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Rig-wise, you talked there about fishing in it. For you, confidence, whether you're fishing on a clearer area near some weed or whether you're fishing in the weed itself, what do you opt for?
I mean, certainly, there was one thing I was going to say about fishing in the thick weed, like the Canadian weed. You know, even when you're casting out and you can't feel a clear spot anywhere, the way I used to judge it by was using a marker float. If I could get the marker float to come up, it was fishable. You know, like if you cast out, and we all know what it's like, you cast out in weed and it doesn't come up.
Yeah.
But sometimes you cast out in areas you think it's solid weed, but the float's coming up. You know, I'd always fish those areas, and I've always caught fish from those areas. So, you know.
So like you're casting out, you're not getting a drop, but you're judging it by if your marker float
yeah,
comes
if
up.
the marker, if you can cast to an area a couple of times, 2 or 3 times, and that marker float will come up, that's fishable to me.
Right.
And I've caught fish from those areas. But, yeah, it's the types of weed. You know, sometimes with that thick Canadian pondweed, if I'm getting the marker float up and all that, sometimes it's better just to bomb one in there.
Yeah.
You know, on a shorter hook length. And, you know, a longer hook length might catch up somewhere, a shorter one behind the lead, a bomb in there. It's so many different variations.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just how I feel on the day. You know, there's never like a black and white situation in carp fishing. It's always like any given day, there's probably 10 different ways to catch a carp.
Of course.
And one, you've got to be confident, and yeah, 2, it's just got to capture that carp.
So for you, Steve, sort of, summarising, it's important to sort of know and try and distinguish the type of weed that you've got in your swim.
Yeah.
That would be your standard sort of approach with regards to being in and around weed, yeah?
Yeah, I think if it was going to summarise it, I don't change things too much.
Yeah.
You know, whatever type of weed it is, I don't worry about fishing in or around it. So I don't change things too much. You know, I don't pull back in silkweed. I might bomb it through the Canadian or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, at the end of the day, if I didn't catch fish, then I'd have to change. But, you know, I've caught so many fish in weed, just fishing the normal standard ways. It just works, you know, it's just getting your head around it. That's the main thing.
I love it, Steve. Steve, thank you very much, mate. Don't overthink it in weed. Listen to Steve, and hopefully you'll catch 10% of what you've caught, mate. Thanks for coming in, mate.
Cheers, Hess. Thanks, mate.
Now, having finally located a spot, I wouldn't say it's the biggest spot, So what I've done, or what I'm opting to do first, is get the rods out. What I want is those rigs in situ, nice and precise, feel for a drop every time. And then once those rigs are out, I'll then apply my particle bait over the top of it. A lot of people will spom loads and then try and get the rigs out into place. I want those rigs in situ because even when I'm spomming over the top, if there are numbers of fish there, there is the chance that I could get a bite really, really quickly whilst introducing bait even, or maybe even before. In terms of rigs, because of the nature of the spot, and as I've leaded around, I've leaded left and right and had a little explore of the spot itself. The middle, right in line with the tallest tree, and the centre of that tree is really clean. So I'm going to fish that on a little blowback rig, hard on the deck. A small little 12mm Scopex squid wafter and a little bit of fake corn just on top, just to keep it nice, responsive and buoyant, just like the small particle we're going to fish over the top of it. Either side of that, as tight as I can possibly get them, the spot is a little bit soft. There's a little bit more siltweed present. So I'm going to give myself a buffer and I'm going to fish them on little Ronnie rigs, just with a couple of grains of fake corn popped up. So I've got a bit of clearance, but once again, every time making sure I feel for the drop and keeping everything as concentrated as I possibly can. That's the key with fishing like this. There are good numbers of fish, and where they're on you, you want loads of particle there to keep them in the area, but you want to fish really tight and concentrate them. That's the theory. Fingers crossed, we can get these rods out, pull them on that spot, get some bait out, the horseshoe carp play ball.
So I'm just going to knock up a 5 litre mix for tonight. Not going to go too mad, just want to get a nice carpet of bait out there with all them small bits right over the baits. Obviously got 3 rods on the spot, so I want it to be nice and tight and get the fish really sifting through that gravel spot, and hopefully I can sort of build a hit into the evening, maybe into early morning. Now, as with all of my particle fishing, I start with hemp because it's a proven winner, but this one's a bit different. The Scopex squid hemp, it's got loads of squid pieces in it. We had that, and we had the Scopex flavour as well to complement Scopex boilies. And as you'll see, it makes a really nice cloud and it makes it quite tacky. Hemp in itself, really good quality and nice and oily. So I start with about half a jar of hemp seed. Give it a nice mix up, make sure them squid pieces are all blended in nicely. Then I add small seed mix. Again, real salty, nice and tasty, palatable, but also the good thing about this is because we cook it in a certain way, you get the starches out of it. So I normally go for half a jar, give it plenty of sort of disturb it, you know, and get all them liquids working as well, because it's full of goodness. Fish really like the carbohydrate, particularly after they've just spawned. So yeah, I won't go mad, I just want to make a small enough mix to show you guys. Now, sweet corn, it's a firm favourite with everyone. I like to do it for a fleck of colour. Don't really want to go mad with lots and lots of corn, but also it gives me a hook bait option. I can fish fake sweet corn, or if the range allows, possibly real bits as well. Again, like I say, just a smattering, I don't go too mad. You can obviously put lots of sweet corn in, but ultimately it is down to your personal preference. I just like to give it like a nice array, as long as I'm spodding nice and tight. Then finally, I've got some boilies here, flake boilies that I've been soaking, just in lake water really, just to wash them out, make them nice and easy to sort of crumb up, and I sort of squish them and add them to the mix. Finally, at the very end, I've got Himalayan rock salt, just a fine version, and I dust it in. Now, obviously the small seed is salty, it's already got added salt, but I like to give it a good kick, and particularly on, at the moment, horseshoe, the guys here have said they've just spawned, and ultimately the fish will be seeking out their minerals. So what I like to do is give it a good dusting. I will warn you now, if you bite your fingernails or anything like that, it does make your fingers sting a bit, but it's a really good additive, and it's brilliant for adding right at the last minute, you know, just to sort of make sure that the bait is dissolved all in it. And I'll quite often add a bit of lake water just to keep it nice and hydrated so that you don't get them floating bits. But the mix is really simple. You've got loads of different hook bait options there, bits and pieces, and you've got that really nice carpet. And then you can fish your 3 rods right amongst all this lot. Right, so I've shown you guys the bait. I'm just putting out 5 litres, so one of our small buckets. The wind's died down a bit now as well, which is good. We're getting real savage crosswinds, and obviously that makes spodding nice and tight a lot harder. So we've got a bit of calm now, and I'm going to make the most of that and get this bucket out.
The best thing about summertime has to be the long, beautiful, sunny evenings, which mean one thing: cheeky evenings floater fishing. Now, Rob has put me onto a lovely little venue. I've managed to strategically finish in the podcast studio a little bit early, and I'm going to try and capitalise on the beautiful weather and catch some floater caught carp. And what I've done is, when I've got here, I've gone round quickly on a lap and introduced some floaters. And just before I go and try and hopefully nick one, I'm going to run you through the setup. Now, the first thing to consider is obviously a pair of Polaroid glasses. You need to be able to see, especially with the bright sunlight conditions, the glare off the water, they are absolutely essential. From that, rod choice. Now, I normally opt for 10 foot, 3.5 pound test curve scopes in my fishing, but today, because we're using smaller hooks and lighter hook lengths, I've chosen a 10 foot, 3 pound test curve, just to be a little bit more forgiving when using that lighter tackle and to keep everything balanced. I've paired with that a little scope reel. That balances the setup perfectly. You're going to be holding it all the day, so you don't want a big cumbersome reel on that. On the reel itself is 10 pound zig flow, a designated floater line. It's neutral buoyancy. You don't want a heavy main line like bullet sinking your float and bringing your float out of position. You want it to be fit to purpose. To that, I've attached a bolt machine controller float. They're available in a number of different sizes, and you need to match that to the distance that you are fishing. So for instance, today I'm probably not going to be chucking more than 40 yards. So I've got a medium-sized bolt machine just to get past the fish to be able to draw it back. In terms of a hook length, I've got 8 foot of 10 pound zig flow again, and that's down to a little size 8 floater claw hook. And onto that, I've super glued a little trimmed down Scopex squid pop-up. There are a number of different ways you can attach your hook bait. You can do that via a zig screw, via a hair, and even hooking a soft hookable floater on. But that's my preferred method, with a little bit of glue. That's the setup. I'm going to get round there and hopefully nick one. Well, there you have it. The result of a couple of hours floater fishing on a beautiful summer's evening. That kit that I showed you and setup, make sure you get yourself sorted. Always keep your setup in your car. You never know when you're going to get a couple of hours you can nip off and help yourself to a bit of floater fishing sport. I'm going to get this one back, get on the road, get all the way home with a big smile on my face. Well, it's finally happened. It was slicking like you wouldn't believe over that spot. Right in the middle of all that slick, has ramped off. Fortunately, when you're fishing free on a spot, I think it's picked up maybe the right hand rod, and there's a ton of weed out there, and we're fishing barbless hooks, which is always a bit nervy. So, slowly, very softly and very gently, I'm going to try and coax him back this way.
That's an original, isn't it?
Don't talk it up here, boy. I just want to get it in the net, mate. Just want to get it in the net.
Can't be that far out, don't you?
Can't be, it's just here, isn't it? Yank. Get in there, Max Hendry. What a netting job, mate. Wow, as the carpy conditions roll in and my hair gets wet, this is the result of that bucket of particle I put out last night. I'm chuffed to bits. A prime example of the mega stock that's in the Carp Society Horseshoe Lake. I couldn't be happier. I'm singing in the rain. Let's get him back after some carp care and hopefully nick another bite. Mwah! Got a scale on the other side that I'll do as well. Right, Max, I want to talk to you about the business end of things. You've obviously talked about the particle mix you're using, particles in general. What presentation are you fishing over the top? More importantly, probably, your hook bait choice, because there's an infinite amount of things you could potentially fish over the top.
Yeah, so obviously when it comes to it, you've got loads of different sizes and shapes and everything in the mix, you know. Sometimes if they're a bit finicky, you want to emulate that, and other times you want something bright so you can get a quick bite. So it's sort of chopping and changing until you find that sort of magic one, you know, and I think having a few options is always good. So normally I start with, if it's allowed, like a fake sweet corn. I think they're always a real winner. Obviously, just they're resilient as well. So if it's multiple casts and stuff and it's fishing at longer ranges and that sort of thing, you know that it's going to stay on. Normally just yellow, to be honest, Hassan. It's not like anything scientific. I suppose putting corn in the mix, and there's little yellow flecks in all the maize and everything that we feed, you know.
Do you fish that on the deck, wafter, pop up? How do you go about sort of selecting that element of your hook bait?
I suppose it depends on the sort of situation. If you're fishing like on Horseshoe, you can fish like low-lying silkweed and still put particle out. So it's all like, I depend the height on that. If I get in like really good drops and it's like hitting the bottom of nice gravel areas, then I'll try and fish it closer to the bottom. Maybe like the length of a hook. That's probably the best way of putting it, just enough. Sometimes like it sounds mad, but even like a hinge differy can work if it's like a bit lower silkweed, you know, because there's different heights to the silkweed no matter what you think it's like. It's like a mattress, isn't it, or a duvet, sorry, on the floor.
Yeah.
And it will be all different levels and the fish will just be picking off it. So a hinge rig doesn't look actually too blatant over that, but it would over gravel, for instance. So essentially
there, the firmer the drop for you, the lower you want that presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the bait's on the bottom and they're feeding on the bottom, aren't they? So you kind of want to make it as close to that as possible. Got obviously different ones. I do sort of mix between pop-ups and wafters as well. So I've got even a citrus one that I've made myself, just yellows, oranges, anything colour-wise that might spark some attention. And then, I quite like whites. I think when you see all the seeds that are all broken up, your hemp flecks and everything, there's little tinges of white, isn't there, throughout the swim, if you like, if you bait it tightly. And I think that little round ball, maybe trim down so it just slowly sinks. And again, like with the rigs, it's very much slow sinking baits if you can help it, just so that it sort of, I suppose, mirrors what your bait's going to do when the fish sucks in. It's all light stuff in it, it's flying in. So you want it to fly in because they're going to get a better hook hold and ultimately land them when you're playing them.
Do you use anything like match the hatch style? Because obviously you've got bright ones there, you've talked about corn, and I get the whole principle of something bright in the middle of all that particle, they hone in on it. That I completely get. But anything sort of, because there is boilie in the mix, is there anything match the hatch? Would you ever use that? Yeah,
so I've actually got the large seed mix, and I've been having a go with that as well, because obviously you've got different types of maize. So even in this part I've just sort of separated a few like hook baits. We've got chickpeas, there's maple peas, red maize, which is a bit different. Like red maize is really good on its own, but you don't see it getting used that much, but it would be a real good sort of one to go over the top. Like again, they're all small particles, aren't they? Normal maize, popcorn maize, there's all sorts in there, but they're all hook baits, you know, and we can add in, if you want to add a bit of balance to it, it's a bit of foam or something like that, isn't it, in between sandwich, you know, and you just run that presentation like that. But I like to have something a bit more resilient if I'm fishing over a longer period, or the fish are a bit finicky and don't like the casts too much. But
or if you've got this bird life, no?
Yeah, of course, the birds are relentless, and things like this, especially when it's natural bait, I think they actually know what a plastic bait is. They know what pop-ups are, they're off the deck, and they are a bit more aware of them, and I think that plays into our strengths because we can just leave them out there until we get the bites. So.
Last question, and again on the theme of hook baits, but sort of, I know obviously in Horseshoe where we're fishing there's a prevalence of tench. There's loads of other lakes where people will go and adopt particle, and there may be a presence of other nuisance fish, bream for example, big roach. When you're talking about hook baits and you're fishing over particle and you've got all those nuisance fish in the mix as well, is there anything specifically that you do that will single out carp, that will sort of eliminate the nuisance fish? Or is it a case of, I don't know, just playing the numbers game, wading through the tench and the bream and hoping the carp get on the spot?
I think the tench feed quite finicky, so if your rigs are good, it's kind of like a good teller. I kind of don't mind catching tench because I know that like everything's actually going pretty well, and when a carp comes along, I'm pretty much got a good chance, you know. When it comes to bream though, they're just greedy, and I actually believe that I've obviously seen it on other lakes, and I've talked to friends about it, because everyone tries that myth of trying to avoid the bream and try and stop them, because you want to obviously catch your target species. And I think sometimes if you bait it real heavily with particles, actually a small bait is what you want. A lot of people turn to 20 millers and stuff like that, but that just makes it like a giant thing that they can get a lot of nutrition from in one mouthful, and they're lazy, aren't they? Bream are lazy, just like big carp are lazy.
So for them, they're like the bigger bait is actually.
I think so. I genuinely believe if I put little bits out and then I just put a few 20 millers out, I bet the bream would eat them in the end. They just start eating. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's a different way of looking at it. I know yeah, like say Gary said on Fen Drayton, all the bream anglers caught the carp, and because they were using bits for the bream, and all the carp anglers caught bream, and they were using bigger baits.
Top job. Thank you very much, mate. Let's hopefully go and put your theory into practice. Wicked, wasn't it?
Textbook, mate.
But you deserve that because you've angled exceptionally well, mate. You've put a lot of effort in, and hopefully Horseshoe repays you. Oh, I've got the pressure of the netting job, or do you want to net it yourself, Max?
I trust you, mate, as always. Like.
But he is in the net. Well done, mate. Well angled. You deserve that.
So the change in spot paid off just lovely, and holding up an excellent horseshoe common. Hopefully we'll be lucky and get another one before the day's out, but I'm very happy with this one as it is.
Now I'm here to take you on a whistle-stop tour of the Nash Titan Hide range of shelters. Within the range itself, there are a number of different models, and no doubt you'd have seen myself using one in session. Before I talk you through the specifics of each model, I'm going to talk about the range overall. They're a fast to put up, very mobile, compact and strong shelter. They're designed to be able to fish in really tight swims as well as in main swims. They complement the whole scope theme if you're a mobile angler, for example. And whether you be a static approach angler, a tall angler, or an angler who maybe is just starting out, there is something within the range to suit you, your budget and your needs as an angler. The range all features a flat back design, which ensures that your bed chair can be pushed right against the back of the shelter, keeping all the elements out and also ensuring you've got maximum space to store all your luggage in front of you. As well as that, the range itself is extremely adaptable with various accessories that you can buy, such as ground sheets, zip-in mozzie mesh infills and zip-in waterproof fronts to complement the bivvies themselves. All these allow you to customise your bivvy to suit your exact angling needs within that session. So let's go take a look at the Titan Hide range. Starting with the standard Nash Titan Hide. Obviously, it's available in two sizes. You've got your standard size and XL. Standard size is brilliant for short sessions, tight swims, or somebody who's looking to be ultra mobile in their angling. And XL if you're a taller angler or you want some more space around you. In terms of features, the material is made of a 5,000mm hydrostatic nylon material, so it's waterproof and breathable. It's also got two Velcro rod retaining straps, and it's obviously got all the features I talked about with regards to saving space, flat back designs, and the ability to add on things to customise exactly what you want. It's a great entrance level shelter. Now, let's go and have a look at the all singing, all dancing Nash Titan Hide Pro range. The Nash Titan Hide Pro range is available in two different looks. You've got the lovely unique Nash Camo Pro, and you've also got the standard Pro in a lovely olive green, depending on what your taste is. These are absolutely packed full of features. To start with, there's an inner vapor shield. This helps reduce condensation when you're fishing under the shelter overnight. And combine that with the fact that there are 4 mozzie mesh panels that are available to increase airflow and help cool you down as well in those warm summer months. The bivvies themselves are made from 10,000mm Aquasense hydrostatic material, which is extremely waterproof and durable. The bivvy features 2 internal pockets for storage such as your keys or wallet when you're in session. There's also an internal hook, brilliant for storing your receiver or maybe a nightlight when you're fishing overnight. They feature 2 magnetic rod straps, and a life-saving feature, especially in adverse weather conditions, is the extended front peak. Couple that with the reverse clip tension bar, that creates a lovely storm drain where all the water runs straight off your bivvy and allows you to remain dry in your shelter. The Pro range, as I said, is available in the camo version and the olive green version, and it's also available in a standard size as well as an XL. So whatever you're looking for, there's something in that range that will cater for you. Go on, Max, he's tearing it a new one.
That was the remit you gave me, he said. there is no chance of a reschedule, Max, so you have to catch one. And I was like, yeah, no pressure, Max, crack on.
Yeah, it's great netting, Max Hendry. Well, it doesn't get more of a perfect way to end a shoot than that, mate. Particles on a spot, completed it. Max, thank you so much for coming out. It's great to have you out the office, mate.
Thank you for having me. I've enjoyed every minute, mate. It's been really good.
You shared some tips. You've caught a mega fish to end on.
Yeah,
we've helped ourselves to a few. There's loads of info in there. And let's hope it's not too long before we see you again, mate, on the cameras.
Well, I'm invited back.
Of course you are.
Yeah,
thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon with another episode of The Drop. Well, how is that for an extra time carp? An unbelievably beautiful scale fish. Infamous of what Horseshoe Lake is famous for, and always a good idea to pack up slowly. A massive thanks to the Carp Society Horseshoe Lake for letting us on. Thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.